She thought she was buying a rusted shipping container for scrap, just another forgotten hunk of steel, buried behind an abandoned industrial yard. But when Marley Reyes cracked the doors open, and the sunlight hit what was hidden beneath the tarp, her breath caught. It wasn't junk. It was history on wheels. And as she peeled the cover back, piece by piece, she realized this wasn't just a rare machine. It was a secret someone never meant to be found. Before we dive into what Marley uncovered inside that shipping container, let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you live for stories about hidden relics, buried legacies, and machines that rewrite the past, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's reveal is even bigger. The sun baked the cracked asphalt of the industrial yard, warping the air above it in shimmering waves. Marley Reyes pulled her denim jacket tighter around her waist and stepped out of her truck, boots crunching against broken glass and gravel. The place felt forgotten, not just abandoned, but erased. A "for sale" sign swung crooked on a rusted chain-link fence, half swallowed by ivy. Beyond it, rows of discarded machinery, collapsed sheds, and overgrown equipment choked what little remained of the original road. She'd come looking for parts, cheap, obscure, maybe salvageable. But what she found was a silence too heavy for a weekday morning. Her boots echoed through the empty yard as she weaved past a collapsed lift arm and the skeleton of what once might have been a mobile crane. Then, behind a wall of weeds and stacked pallets, she saw it. A shipping container, deep red beneath streaks of rust, sun-bleached to near brown. It sat half-canted in the weeds, one corner sunk into the earth, the other nearly hidden behind tall grass. Most would have missed it. Marley didn't. She pushed through the green growth and stood in front of it, one hand brushing the cool metal. The number on the side had been scorched off or sanded away, nothing but a blank strip remained, smooth and unnatural. The container's handles were bolted shut, with industrial-grade lock bars. Someone had gone out of their way to keep this sealed. That didn't scare Marley. It intrigued her. The listing for the property hadn't even mentioned the container. It was just Lot 34B, Miscellaneous Debris and Scrap Material, ASIS. She made a call to the auction rep, confirmed ownership was clear, and wired the money that afternoon. $1,100. Probably more than it was worth in metal, but something about the silence behind those steel doors gnawed at her in a way she couldn't explain. Back at her shop that evening, she paced. The container was scheduled for delivery in the morning, but her mind wouldn't let it rest. What was inside? Just old office supplies, maybe broken tools, maybe nothing. But deep down, she hoped for more. Not for money, she didn't think like that. It was about discovery. Marley had grown up elbow-deep in engine blocks and carburetors. Her late father used to say, "Some machines talk to you before you turn the key. You just gotta listen with your gut." The next morning, a flatbed backed the container into the side lot of her shop. The driver hopped down, wiped his hands, and whistled low. "This thing smells like secrets," he muttered. Marley just nodded, already halfway to her toolbox. She didn't need a pep talk. She needed a crowbar. By noon, the bolts were halfway cut. By 1:30, the first door gave a long metallic groan as it creaked open, revealing blackness inside. Dust hung in the air like ash. Marley squinted into the dark and froze. There, barely visible beneath a heavy beige tarp, were the outlines of thick steel treads. Not tires, tracks, and they weren't rusted, not even a little. Marley stood there, heart thrumming in her chest, the smell of dust and old oil wrapping around her like a blanket pulled from the grave. The inside of the container was cooler than it should have been, like it had been sealed tight for decades, untouched by the sun baking the outside world. She took a cautious step forward. Her boots thudded against the steel floor, echoing. The tarp covering whatever was inside didn't look like standard canvas. It was thick, military grade, maybe flame retardant, It draped over the machine like a burial shroud. She circled it slowly, flashlight in hand. The beam caught glimpses of red primer paint beneath the edge of the tarp, not the color of age or rust, but purpose, intent. Someone had restored this, or preserved it. The back end confirmed it, wide track plates bolted over reinforced sprockets. Not a tank. Something lighter, built for speed, maybe, but nothing she recognized from any catalog or surplus auction she'd ever been to. She ran a gloved hand over the taut edge of the tarp and paused. There were markings, faint ones, pressed into the fabric. A symbol she couldn't quite make out, like an eagle with one wing fractured. Government? Prototype? The letters EMB were stenciled near the bottom in fading black ink. Beneath them, the number 09. Marley's gut tightened. Whatever this thing was, someone had gone to a lot of effort to keep it hidden. Not just parked. Hidden. She reached for the tarp, hesitated, then yanked. It didn't come off easily. It clung to the metal underneath like it didn't want to let go. She gritted her teeth, braced a boot on the side of the frame, and pulled harder. With a loud rip, the fabric tore loose, revealing a squat, armored vehicle painted in matte black and crimson. Its frame was low to the ground, wide, and bristled with strange fixtures. The front grille looked like it had been shaped for intimidation or airflow. The turret mount on top was empty, but the reinforced hatch behind it gleamed with new bolts. And there was no dust. Marley stepped back, heart hammering. No dust. Not a layer. Not even a trace on the windshield. She turned slowly, scanning the interior of the container. Everything else was coated. The walls, the floor, all layered in grime. Except for the machine. It sat clean and polished, like it had just been rolled in last week and sealed up by a ghost. She reached up, pressed her hand to the armored door. Warm. Impossible. She jerked her hand back, breathing faster now. Then she noticed the second anomaly. A small access panel on the side of the container, half hidden behind the machine's rear track. It had a rusted handle and a keypad long since dead. She hadn't seen it from the outside. Was this some kind of power hookup? Data port? Marley backed out slowly, mind racing. This wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was a message. Someone wanted it found, but only by the right person. And somehow, that person was her. The next morning, Marley stood in the pale light of dawn, staring into the container like it might change if she blinked. She hadn't touched it again since peeling back the tarp. Couldn't bring herself to. The machine, no. The vehicle sat there like it had been waiting. Not just for someone. For her. She ran a hand through her hair, still half-tied from sleep, and stepped back inside. The steel groaned beneath her boots. She crouched next to the exposed track and ran her fingers over the rubber-padded treads. They were thick, heavy-duty, built for terrain no pickup could handle. Mountains? Marshes? Maybe military, maybe not. But one thing was clear, these weren't made for roads. No logos, no serial stamps, no paint chipping. And that smell old oil and heat. She knelt, reaching under the chassis to check for any manufacturer's plate. Nothing. Not even a weld seam to suggest one had been removed. Whoever made this didn't want it traced. Or maybe they'd never planned for it to leave where it came from. Marley grabbed her tools and pulled open the side hatch. The latch clicked softly, like it had just been oiled. Inside was a tangle of wires, red, black, and something else. A silvery blue line threaded through the others like a vein. She touched it. The moment her glove brushed the wire, something hummed, not loud. Just a vibration, deep and low, almost too subtle to notice. But it was there. She pulled back, startled. The wire kept humming. She stepped outside and turned in a full circle, looking for cameras, signs of tampering, anything. But the lot was silent. Just the hum of power lines in the distance and the chirp of cicadas waking up. Her instincts kicked in. She grabbed her work gloves, pulled the rolling ladder around, and climbed up the side of the container to peer into the vehicle's top hatch. It was unlocked. No codes, no security. She lifted it. The cabin inside was tight. Designed for 2 people, maybe 3 if you squeezed. Bucket seats, steel-plated floor, minimal gauges. Not a tank, not a Humvee. It looked experimental, like someone had crossed a fighter cockpit with an armored rover. She dropped inside. Everything was cold, but not lifeless. She could feel it, that dormant hum, like a breath being held. A key port sat below the central console, not an ignition, more like a data insert. To the left, a compartment. She popped it open. Empty. Except for a single photo. It was old, curled at the edges. A group of people in coveralls, standing in front of the very same vehicle only back then. It was painted fully black, no crimson. All their faces were blurred or scratched out, except one. A woman in the center. Sharp eyes, red hair tied back. Marley froze. The woman in the photo looked exactly like her. Not similar, identical. She stared, breath shallow. Her grip tightened on the photo, whatever this machine was. It already knew her. Marley sat in the cockpit long after the morning light had faded into afternoon, the photograph resting on her thigh like a question she couldn't begin to answer. Her fingers traced the edge of the image again and again, her eyes locked on the woman's face. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was exact same jawline, same eyes, even the same faint freckle beneath the right cheekbone. But that was impossible. The photo had aged decades of it. The edges yellowed, the color faded. The clothing in the background, the style of the boots, the grain of the image, this wasn't some digital fake. She flipped it over. There was handwriting. Faint and smeared, but still legible in spots. EMB-09 Field Crew, May 1987, Red Bird, assigned to Interior Systems. Final prototype complete. Test phase begins Monday. Redbird. Marley whispered the name aloud, feeling it roll off her tongue like a word she should have remembered but somehow forgot. She climbed out of the vehicle, the photograph gripped in her hand. Back in the shop, she spread out a clean towel on her workbench and laid the image flat, weighing down the corners with sockets and spanners. Then she turned back to the container. If that photo was from 1987, then this machine had been sitting for over 35 years. But the engine didn't show signs of age. The bolts were clean, the wiring still hummed, no rust, no dust. And the strangest part, the tire treads still had moisture in them. Not condensation, not oil, like the whole vehicle had been sealed in time. She grabbed her flashlight again and stepped to the rear of the container. There it was, that strange compartment half hidden behind the track system. She hadn't noticed it until yesterday. She dropped to her knees and scraped away the dirt and grime around the handle. A small, rusted box with a clasp. She pried it open. Inside was a steel case, rectangular, about the size of a toolbox. It had no lock, just a pressure seal. She opened it, and there it was, an ammo box, matte green, military issue, sealed tight with tape. No markings, no labels, just a single embossed number, 09. Marley carried it to the workbench like it was fragile, set it down beside the photo. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she reached for her laptop, pulled up every salvage manifest from the auction site, and scanned them line by line. Nothing about EMB-09. No mention of shipping containers from Ironfield Yard. No records of any military prototypes in that lot at all. She called the auction office. The woman on the other end sounded polite until Marley gave the lot number. Then there was a pause. A long one. That container shouldn't have been sold, the woman said finally, her voice quieter now. It wasn't on the approved manifest. Can I call you back? But Marley had already hung up, because something told her no one was supposed to find this. And now, someone might be coming to make sure she didn't keep it. The next morning, Marley stood in front of the town library just after it opened. It was the only place left that might have pre-digital records, the kind not scrubbed, not redacted, not rewritten. Her laptop hadn't turned up anything useful. Every search for EMB09, Redbird, or even Ironfield Yard hit a wall. But she remembered something her father used to say. If you want the truth, don't ask the internet. Ask the dust. The local archive room smelled of paper and must, the kind of place where time moved slower. A volunteer named Edna guided her to the industrial section back issues of city plans, zoning records, property transactions. Marley combed through them, page by page, until her eyes burned. Then she saw it. Ironfield Research Annex established 1952, shuttered 1991. Originally built for materials testing under the Department of Defense, later privatized under a shell company called Emberline Technologies. The name hit her like a jolt. EMB. Emberline. She flipped faster now. Blueprints, maps, faded newspaper clippings. Ironfield had been used for all sorts of things. Weapon prototypes, armor tests, field simulations. Most of the records ended in the mid-80 seconds, right before the facility was closed due to a containment breach, no paper detailed. But buried between two water-stained pages was a grainy photo of a launch platform surrounded by scaffolding. Parked atop it was a vehicle wide, low, with thick tracks and a pointed nose. She recognized it instantly. Her machine. The caption read, Emberline Mobile Platform, Prototype 09, testing halted after Phase 1. Unknown status of final build. No notes on what the vehicle was for. No specs. Just a single line handwritten along the border in red pen. Field group scattered. Redbird, unaccounted for. Marley sat back, heart thudding. Redbird again. That woman in the photo. The one who looked like her. She photocopied everything and rushed back to the shop, the files clutched tight in her arm. The shipping container still sat in the side lot, quiet as ever, but it didn't feel still. It felt like it was listening. She opened the workshop door, turned the locks behind her, and spread the copied pages across the workbench next to the photo and the sealed ammo box. 3 pieces of the puzzle, none of them making full sense. But together, they hinted at something buried deep, not just a machine, but a secret. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown caller. She let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, it rang again. Same number. She picked up. There was silence on the other end for a beat. Then a voice low, measured, and old. Miss Reyes, we need to talk about what you've found. Marley's blood ran cold. I don't know what you mean, she said, trying to keep her voice even. The voice didn't pause. Yes, you do. That machine wasn't meant to be opened. A click. Then silence. No callback. No trace. Marley stood frozen, phone trembling in her hand. They knew. The knock came just after dusk. 3 sharp raps. Then silence. Marley froze, wrench in hand, mid-turn on a valve she wasn't even really working on. Her heart thudded in her ears. The shop was closed. The lights were dimmed. She hadn't told anyone what she found, not really. Only Edna had seen her at the library, and Edna barely used email. Another knock, this time softer. She grabbed the crowbar off the wall, not subtle, but solid, and moved toward the front door. Through the narrow window, she saw the silhouette of a man standing under the flickering streetlight. Older, tall, heavy coat, military posture. She cracked the door, not unchaining it. We're closed. I'm not here for repairs, the man said calmly. I'm here for answers. His voice matched the one from the call. She hesitated, then stepped out slowly, keeping the crowbar by her side. The air smelled of oil and damp pavement. The man didn't move. He wore a brown leather jacket that had seen better decades, boots scuffed, and his hair was more gray than dark. But his eyes were alert, sharp like a soldier's, or a man used to watching doors behind him. You the one who called me? Marley asked. I am. Who are you? He looked at her, not like a stranger, but like he knew her. Name's Bishop. I worked at Ironfield, back before it went dark. She stiffened. So you know what that thing is? He nodded once. I helped build it. A beat of silence passed between them. What is it? She asked. Why was it sealed up in a container for 30 years? And why does the woman in this photo look exactly like me? Bishop exhaled through his nose. That's a longer story than I can give you out here. But I'll tell you what you need to know. He glanced around. May I come in? Marley hesitated. Something in his voice, the way he didn't press, didn't threaten, made her believe he wasn't there to hurt her. She stepped aside. Inside the shop, under the hum of the flickering fluorescence, Bishop's eyes swept across the bench, the ammo box, the photograph, the photocopied Ironfield documents. So, Marley said, folding her arms. Start talking. Bishop reached for the photo, studied it. Her name was Mara Glenn, code name, Redbird, engineer, systems specialist. She designed EMB-09's internal tech, some of it decades ahead of what the world had. Fuel matrices, autonomous fallback routines. She was brilliant. And she disappeared. During the last test cycle, she and the prototype both vanished. No trace. Emberline buried the project, said it failed in the field. But some of us knew better. He turned to Marley. I was the last one to see her alive. Why does she look like me? She asked again. Bishop didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the shipping container, looked inside at the machine. Then he said quietly, because that vehicle wasn't built for war. He turned back to her, face lined and serious. It was built to carry something or someone across time. The words landed like a dropped wrench. Time. Marley stared at Bishop, trying to decide if he was joking, testing her, or just plain insane. But there was no amusement in his expression. No smugness. Just weariness. Like someone carrying too many truths for too long. Time? She echoed. Bishop nodded slowly. Emberline's official directive was defense innovation. But beneath that, under classified tiers, even most of the base didn't know about, there was something else. They called it Project Emberline, same name as the company, but it had nothing to do with weapons. Not in the traditional sense. He stepped closer to the bench, rested a hand gently on the ammo box. That vehicle was meant to transport unstable energy sources across unrecoverable distances. But somewhere in the late 80 seconds, Redbird figured out something the higher-ups didn't want to admit. The machine wasn't just stabilizing energy. It was moving it. Marley crossed her arms. You're saying she invented a time machine? Bishop didn't blink. I'm saying she built one and disappeared into it. A silence settled thick between them. Outside, the wind kicked up against the side of the shipping container. The air in the garage felt too still. She left without telling anyone? Marley asked. Why? She didn't trust the people funding it. The program had started to change. Less science, more control. They wanted to use the technology to alter events, not prevent war, but win it. Rewrite history to their favor. Bishop looked down. She was a scientist, not a soldier. So she did what she thought was right. She locked the system and vanished. Marley reached for the photo again, this time seeing it with new eyes. And now, it's back, he nodded. Or maybe it never left. Maybe this is the loop. Maybe she came forward to now. Or maybe it's you. That's impossible, Marley said, but it didn't sound convincing, even to herself. Bishop stepped back. Open the box. Her hands trembled slightly as she peeled away the last of the old tape and unlatched the lid. Inside, wrapped in thick cloth, were 3 items. A folded map marked with strange timestamps instead of dates. A thin notebook filled with equations and sketches in a rushed, slanted hand. And a letter. The envelope was old, yellowed, sealed with wax, stamped with the same fractured wing symbol from the tarp. 2. Marley Reyes, if this has found you. She didn't speak, didn't breathe. She tore it open with shaking hands and unfolded the letter. The handwriting matched the one from the back of the photo. If you're reading this, then you opened the box. That means you've found EMB-09. That means the timelines have finally converged. I didn't build the machine to escape war. I built it to escape what came after. This vehicle isn't just a vessel. It's a failsafe. And you are the final key, Redbird. Marley sat down hard on the stool, the letter crinkling in her lap. Bishop's voice was low. You were never meant to be just a mechanic. Marley barely slept. The letter sat on her nightstand like a live wire. She read it again at 2 a.m., again at 4, and again just before dawn, half hoping the words would change, that it would all turn out to be some elaborate hoax, a misread coincidence. But each time, the same lines stared back. You are the final key. By sunrise, she was back in the shop, stripped down to a tank top, hair tied back, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Bishop stood nearby, quiet, hands behind his back like a man waiting for permission to enter a church. I need to see inside, she said without looking at him. Bishop simply nodded. I'll help where I can. But most of what's in there, only Redbird understood. They opened the main access panel together. The compartment behind the driver's seat wasn't connected to a fuel line, not in the traditional sense. Instead, it fed into a block that resembled a power core more than an engine. Cylindrical, silver, and humming faintly the same vibration she'd felt through the wiring days earlier. Marley reached for her voltmeter, clipped it to the leads. No reading, she muttered. Because it's not drawing electricity. It's emitting something else, Bishop said. She ran her hand over the cylinder. No warmth, no smell. Just a smooth, slightly pulsing surface. On the underside, a small hatch with a biometric reader. Old school tech. Redbird's thumbprint, probably. But when Marley touched it, the light turned green and the hatch clicked open. Bishop's eyes widened. She coded it to your print. Inside the hatch was a transparent canister, floating in suspension fluid. At the core, a shard of something glowing faintly blue, like the last spark of a star caught in glass. What is that? Marley asked. We called it Pulse Core. Redbird found it in the Ironfield vaults. Said it wasn't from here, maybe not even from our time. Said it reacts to perception. Only works when observed. Bishop stepped back. She said it chooses who can touch it, who can use it. Marley reached out. Her fingers hovered above the canister. The glow intensified. A hum began to build low, almost musical, like the engine of a ship waiting for instructions. It knows you, Bishop whispered. The lights in the shop flickered. Tools vibrated on their hooks. Outside, the wind died. Everything went still, even time, it seemed. Marley grabbed the notebook from the ammo box and flipped through it again. Faster now. Diagrams. Circuitry. A schematic for a reignition sequence. At the bottom of one page, Redbird's handwriting again. This system cannot operate on logic alone. It requires memory, emotion, identity. If Marley is reading this, the machine is yours now. You have the right to choose the timeline worth saving. What does that mean? Marley asked, her voice suddenly distant. Bishop stared at the machine with something between awe and fear. It means she didn't just build a time engine. She tied it to a person. To you. The hum hadn't stopped since Marley opened the core. It pulsed through the garage floor like a heartbeat, steady, alive. Tools vibrated gently on their pegs, and a low resonance seemed to settle in her chest, like a frequency only she could feel. Bishop said little, hovering near the bay door, his gaze flicking from the vehicle to the letter to Marley like he was watching history unwrap itself again, afraid to interfere. She climbed back into the cockpit. Something had changed. The panel lights, once dead and silent, now glowed faintly along the console, pale orange indicators, blinking slowly. She reached toward the dashboard. Just below the rusted toggle switches was a small, circular indent she hadn't noticed before. She pressed it. With a soft click, A hidden compartment slid open behind the instrument panel. Inside, a reel-to-reel audio tape, wound tight. Beside it, a folded note marked only with the word, "Play." Marley pulled the tape free, heart thudding. In the far corner of the shop, behind a pile of old stereo gear her dad never got around to scrapping, sat an ancient player. She dusted it off, threaded the reel, and clicked the worn play button. The machine whirred to life. Then, static. Then, a voice. "If this reaches you, then the machine accepted you. That means you are either her or her next. And if you are her, Marley, then you've done the impossible. You've found the path through." Marley stepped back, breath shallow. The voice wasn't hers, not exactly, but close. Like someone speaking through a mirror that aged in reverse. "My name was Mara Glenn, Redbird. In 1987, I activated EMB 9 inches secret. I didn't know if it would work. I only knew that if I stayed, they would use this machine to control the future. They wouldn't just revisit wars. They would create them." The tape hissed. "This engine. It's not a weapon. It's a beacon. It locks to identity, to blood. It responds to memory. The core doesn't just power the machine. It remembers through us, through you." Bishop leaned against the wall, his face pale. "I left behind something I couldn't carry with me. Choice. I didn't know what the world would become, Marley. But if you're hearing this, then you've seen it. You know whether it's worth changing or saving." The tape crackled again. Then, silence. Then, softly, "If you decide to activate the jump, the vehicle will ask one question. Only one. And once it's asked, you can't unhear it. Be sure. Be certain. Because time isn't a door, it's a bridge. And once you cross it, you don't get to stand still anymore." Click. The reel stopped. Marley stood frozen, hand still hovering over the player. The garage felt smaller, tighter. Bishop stepped forward. "What was the question?" she whispered. He shook his head. "She never told us. Only that it wasn't about when, it was about why." Marley looked toward the glowing core inside the vehicle. It had waited decades. Now, it was waiting for her answer. Marley didn't sleep that night. She sat cross-legged on the garage floor, staring at the vehicle as if it might blink, as if it might say something first. Outside, the town carried on, dogs barking, sprinklers ticking on, the distant hum of traffic. But inside the shop, time felt suspended. Like the machine had pulled the air tight around it, holding everything still until she decided what came next. The letter, the notebook, the photo, they were all laid out in front of her like offerings. Her father's old tools sat beside them, quiet reminders of the life she'd lived before this one knocked. Before she'd opened a rusted shipping container and found not junk, but possibility. By dawn, the hum had shifted. It grew deeper, slower, like the machine knew she was near a decision. Bishop had gone home just after midnight, giving her space, but not before handing her something he hadn't mentioned before. A small key. Old. Brushed steel. "This belonged to Mara," he said. "She left it in my locker the day she vanished. I never knew what it opened, but I think you do. Now." Marley held that key in her hand, its edges smooth from time and use. She walked slowly to the vehicle, climbed inside. The dash lights flared to full brightness. The hum steadied, like breath drawn in and held. She found the slot near the console, one she hadn't noticed before, flush with the panel. She inserted the key. It turned with a soft click. The hum stopped. Then, a voice filled the cockpit. Calm. Female. Not Redbird's, not hers, but somehow both. Temporal core engaged. Final operator confirmed. Marley Reyes. The console glowed red, then faded to white. "You may proceed." A screen lowered from the ceiling, flickering once before stabilizing. On it, images. Fast, jarring, fragmented cities underwater, forests burning, Headlines screaming across time. Protests, blackouts, floods, extinctions, each image with a year in the corner. 2028, 2034, 2051. Then another sequence. The same cities alive, restored. Headlines of unity, of breakthroughs, of peace. The same years, different choices, alternate results. There is no fixed future, only choices weighted with consequence. Marley gripped the console as the voice asked, "Do you wish to alter the thread?" She stared at the screen. Her throat tightened. Because the truth was, she didn't know. She wasn't a historian. She wasn't a leader. She was a mechanic. A girl with grease on her jeans and too many questions in her heart. But maybe that's why she was chosen. She remembered what Redbird said. Time isn't a door, it's a bridge. Marley took a deep breath. No, she said finally. Not alter. Understand. I don't want to rewrite the past. I want to see it. Learn from it. Carry it forward. The console went dark. Then, a soft pulse. The engine ignited not with fire, but with light. The entire vehicle shimmered. And Marley, gripping the wheel, felt the sensation of gravity bending, of everything she knew folding inward and blooming outward again. She closed her eyes, and the last thing she heard before the shop dissolved around her was the voice saying, "Request acknowledged." Beginning traversal, then silence, and the bridge began.